Breaking news right now out of Raymore, Missouri. Police have been looking for this construction worker that fell into a manhole of a sanitary sewage line at 615 West Foxwood Drive. Want to go straight to the images of this individual. This is video of the scene where he fell in. They were searching that area tremendously. That's a tripod where they were lowering him in, and somehow his harness broke. Right now, they have found the man about a mile away at the golf course, Creekmore Golf Course, at 15th hole there. They tell us he is code red, which means he does have extremely serious injuries, but is alive. We are over the scene of where they have pulled this man out of a manhole. This is it. You can see where they are there. There are a half a dozen or more workers there trying to rescue this man. We're told just moments ago they pulled this individual from that location there, again, the 15th hole at Creekmore Golf Course, and they're leaning over him there. You can see working on this man that fell into that manhole, into a sanitary sewer line. You can see them working, and code red, everybody, does mean serious injuries, alive but serious. And you can imagine they are trying to monitor to check on this man who has spent, he fell in at 8:04 was when we first came in, so about an hour and a half. He was rushed through those sewage lines with the current and has spent about an hour and a half while they searched. And the way they did this is workers went along the sewage line, popping manhole covers, searching, and at one point they got a sign of a flashlight moving around down in one of those sewage lines. We can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 individuals covering this man who has spent an hour and a half in these sewage lines. Going into the line at 615 West Foxwood Drive, which is about a block from City Hall there in Raymore. And now they are on the golf course. And you don't know what business he's with, but you can see one of the things I just noticed there in that video is you could see a bare leg as they are over this man trying to help him. Code red does mean serious, and so we're watching them. This is a live image, everybody, of that man that has just been pulled, and there you see his leg. He's kind of turned on his side. Pretty traumatic experience, as you can imagine, as they work to make sure that he is okay. We're working to try to find out which company this man works for, but they were working there at the Mazuma Credit Union at the corner of Foxwood there when this man fell in. And what we were told they did was they built this tripod and they were lowering him down to do some work. And somehow that harness came undone and this man fell. And as you might imagine, there was a mad rush. One of the workers that was there at the scene working with him ran to a fire department and said something to the effect of, my colleague, my friend has fallen. And there was a major rush to try to find this man as they moved along the sewage lines. And I just continued to watch this live picture from Sky Tracker, and we're just seeing it with you right now as they work to try to make sure this person is okay. You can see that this has led to some sort of body of water there at the Creekmore. You can see them standing up. He traveled more than about 3/4 of a mile. We do have a crew there on the scene that we have been trying to get more information. As you see those workers, they don't seem to be too overly concerned about his state as far as making sure he's steady. Now, this is some of the first activity we're seeing where they're covering him, but there's not that major movement where you can see them potentially concerned about him and his life. But code red definitely does mean serious injuries. We do want to go to Lindsay Shively live on the scene with the details she can provide. Lindsay, what are you seeing where you are?
We're talking to crews here on the scene who are telling us that they found him in critical condition. It's 3/4 of a mile away from here. They tell us that the pipe that he traveled in took an hour and a half to get 3/4 of a mile. That pipe might have only been 24 inches. Which you can imagine is not very big at all. We don't know how old this man was. We do know that the worker he was working with saw this happen and ran next door to the fire department, which is how it was able to get started so quickly, and they were able to find him. Again, they haven't told us if this man was conscious when they got him out, but we know he is in critical condition. He is alive. We're going to stay here on the scene and get you the latest updates as soon as they're available. Krista.
All right, Lindsay, you can only imagine how scary this must have been. I noticed that you mentioned that the pipe he traveled in may have only been 24 inches. And you want to keep this live image here and just imagine that that's 2 pieces of paper, folks, which are about 8.5 by 11 each. And if you take them end to end, that makes 22 inches. And so if you're sitting there at your desk or you're sitting there watching television, imagine 2 pieces of paper put together, and that's about the width of that pipe he may have traveled through. And we're seeing the Lifeline helicopter come into the scene there. Again, we're at Creekmore Golf Course there in Raymore as they land there on the 15th hole where this man traveled along that sewage pipe all the way down to this body of water there on the golf course, where you can see it comes to an end in the slab of concrete where they were able to find him. Again, you heard Lindsay say 3/4 of a mile this man traveled. It took about an hour and a half to travel that far because the first report of this man falling came in at 8:04. So it has been about an hour and 45 minutes now, just being discovered about 10 minutes ago. As you see crews there try to, you can only assume is trying to keep him calm, trying to help him realize that he's now in the presence of people who can help him as they take the life flight. Again, reports coming in at what's called a code red is what they end up sending emergency personnel with, which means serious conditions for this individual who fell into the manhole there at 615 Foxwood. Want to go to SkyTracker. Captain Greg, you've been over the scene of this from the point at which he fell in. You saw the men popping the manhole covers all along this sewage line. And now you've been over the scene here. Tell me what you've been able to see throughout the course of this.
All right, Krista, a lot of activity down here. These utility workers, fire rescue, have been basically going all along the course of this pipe, this storm drain line that goes from 58 Highway and north all the way up to this reservoir area. You can see live from SkyTracker where they have managed to catch this guy, and like Lindsay was saying, quite a traumatic trip as he's come down this pipe all the way to this location. Luckily, the guy's able to get him here before he actually went out into the lake. I would imagine he's got to be very disabled at this point. They are calling it a code red, originally a code yellow, I think, when they first identified him. And I'm going to ask Tom to pull out just a little bit. I was busy a little bit earlier. There's so many locations that the guys have been looking at. I had to help the Life Flight Eagle pilot get to this location. They were actually at one of the other spots the guys were looking. So we got them to this spot. The crews are out. They're getting ready to go over to him and get him loaded up into the helicopter, get him to a trauma center. Tom was just commenting that he could tell from looking at the fellow that he was extremely cold, as you can imagine, taking this trip all the way down here about a mile or so on this drainage culvert. So throw it back to you right now, Krista.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing to watch and just imagine for a moment how scary it must have been. Just first of all, the fall when your harness breaks into this sewage line, and then to hear Lindsay describe a 24-inch diameter of that pipe, which is barely broad enough to have your shoulders go through if you're a normal size individual, and then to travel for an hour and a half in the current of this sanitary sewage line, wondering if anyone's going to find you, wondering if anybody knows where to look and where you're going to end up and if you are going to survive. So here we are, 3/4 of a mile down from this, and they were able to get him and find out this you imagine there are experts that know this is where those sewage lines dump. They checked the manhole covers all along the way, making sure that they hadn't somehow gotten caught along the way. This man hadn't. And then they were able to get him there. And you can see him earlier. We could see a bare foot exposed as the guy sort of laid there, kind of curled up, and obviously cold as the rescue workers scrambled to get their jackets off and cover him. You can see he's probably covered with 2 or 3, maybe even 4 jackets at this point as they work to make sure that he's stable there at the scene before transport. A code red, again, this is how this call was coming in. Originally we heard yellow, which means, injuries but alive. A code red means serious injuries but alive. So we're looking here live from SkyTracker, and I don't know if Tom, our photographer on SkyTracker, can hear me, but if we could pan out just a little bit to get an idea of just how close this man was to heading out into the big body of water there at the Creekmore Golf Club there in Raymore. But as you can see, that slab of concrete is, you would imagine, where the sewage pipe maybe dumps out or is somehow diverted at that point. Sort of out there. Hole 15, we're told, at the Creekmore Golf Course Again, falling in at 615 West Foxwood, right there, Mazuma Credit Union, where some construction was being done and a check was being done. And there's a little peninsula of land there that kind of jets out into that waterway, and that's where the Life Flight helicopter just about 10 minutes ago flew in and landed. And if we stay with this video here, this live images from SkyTracker, which, by the way, is streaming on our website. If you know of someone that might also be looking for an update in this major story out of Raymore today, you can send them straight to our website and watch that live there as well. You see them bringing in the board where they secure the body to make sure there's not any jostling as they support the body and move it to the helicopter. And we're zooming in there, and you can see him really trying to console this man. It does look like maybe he has a neck brace on, and that's a fairly normal procedure when someone's been through something so traumatic. Several coats covering him, reports of him being extremely cold. And it looks like that we're about to transport him, and your heart just breaks thinking about this person. And we'll zoom out of respect for him as we think about how amazing that experience must have been. And we're going to let them do what they do best and help this man make it to the warmth of a hospital bed and the warmth of a hospital where he knows he's going to be okay. We'll continue to check on his status, folks. We know that it came in as a code red, which is extremely serious injuries. And we call and we try to get updates, but oftentimes when they're in the middle of this, those who can answer those questions for us are often so busy trying to get more information on the status of the person they're trying to help that we sort of sit back and wait for those updates. I know Lindsay Shively's been down there on the scene of where this man fell in. They're near the Mazuma Credit Union. They're in Raymore. Lindsay, is there anything more happening at your location?
Yeah, no, they're just still staying on scene trying to watch this line. You know, they had to turn down the main power line to try to get some of the water pressure to stop. I talked to people that live around here, and they didn't lose any, water services in their homes, but can you imagine just 24-inch pipe? That guy needed room to breathe, to keep the water from pushing him down, and how powerful that suction tower must have been to fit this guy who looks like an average-sized guy from the video we're looking at into 24 inches of pipe. He traveled 3/4 of a mile, and that took an hour and a half. It must have been a really painful experience for him. You can see them covering him up, and we do hear he is in critical condition, alive miraculously, but trying to keep him alive and keep him safe.
All right, Lindsay, I obviously stay on with this because we'll be checking back with you on what's happening there at the scene. All of the activity moving from the scene in which the man fell to the scene where he's now been found, as you see these workers carry him to the Life Flight helicopter that's landed there in the 15th hole of the Creekmore Golf Course there in Raymore. We're going to watch him load up. Again, if you're just joining us, we're about 3/4 of the mile where that individual that's now being loaded into the helicopter fell into a manhole cover of a sanitary sewer line. And they had built a tripod. They were there doing work of what nature, we're not sure, but they were there doing work. He was being lowered from that tripod. He was harnessed into that manhole cover, and somehow that harness either broke or failed or what happened, but this man fell into the sewage line there. And we're told that the sewage pipe that he traveled 3/4 of a mile through over the course of an hour and a half with a current strong enough to carry him that pipe may have only been 24 inches wide. So as you're standing, your shoulder width, mine perhaps 20 inches, 22 inches, not a lot of room for movement, and an extremely scary and traumatic situation for this individual. They were popping manhole covers along the route of that sewage line and were able to intercept him somehow there near that slab of concrete before that body of water there at the golf course. There are a lot of experts on sewage lines, and there are a lot of people that understand that a lot better than me about how that works. But you heard Lindsay talking to people there on the scene about the pressure of that fluid moving through those pipes, and that there's a suction that's involved and sucks that fluid toward the place it's supposed to be going. We do know they pulled him to safety it's probably been 25, 30 minutes They were able to pull him out of that manhole there right at the location you're seeing these live images from SkyTracker come from. Pulled him out. He was freezing. It was obvious by his motions, curled onto his side as firefighters and medical respondents scrambled to cover him with their coats. They were able to get him onto that board, neck brace, and try to secure him. And now he is loaded into the helicopter there, the Lifeline helicopter, where he's going to be taken to the hospital. It should be just a couple of moments, and we'll see those blades of the helicopter start up. And the grasses start to blow as the helicopter tries to leave the Raymore golf course there and take this man to some place where he can get the treatment that may be necessary. Again, first report was this man, there may have been a code yellow, which means he's alive and hurt, but going to be okay. And then a code red does mean that there are serious injuries, and that was the most recent report we got on what sort of response was taking place. So as we watch the life flight helicopter start to take off, I know that somebody that has to watch when this happens is Captain Greg Borton up in SkyTracker, and there's an obvious back off of anybody else in the air when this sort of thing starts to happen. Captain?
Okay, Christy, yeah, we're going to try to surmise a little bit what happened here. This event happening on 58 Highway in Raymore, this individual working in this manhole. And what we understand, Krista, is actually used with what would seem like a maneuver system, but more of a storm drain. The individual getting brought all the way to this location, which I think Lindsay said is 3/4 of a mile, could be a little bit further. And the guys working all along this route here, trying to identify where he was. They came all the way down to the lake, managed to find him. The Lifeline helicopter having some trouble finding this because this area that they're looking in is so extensive. We did manage to get the Lifeline helicopter to this spot with our assistance from myself and Tom, and they now have that individual loaded up. As you can see, the helicopter comes up to speed. They're going to head up to a trauma center here in Kansas City, and be interesting to see the follow-up from the story. Krista, back to you.
All right, thank you, Captain. And obviously you had mentioned that you were able to help the Lifeline helicopter find the location. And at one point we did see in the video the rescue crews looking up, sort of squinting into the sky as they looked for SkyTracker. And that may have been at the point where they were looking for direction and trying to get this Lifeline helicopter brought in. But you can see the slab of concrete there where they pulled this man out of the manhole area there. You see Lifeline powering up to carry this man to the hospital where he'll get further treatment. We'll continue to monitor this story, obviously, on our website, NBCActionNews.com. We'll have recaps of it throughout the day, and we'll have an update on this man's condition, and we'll also work to try to find out which company he was working for. I'm Krista Dubell. We're covering this live out of NBC Action News.